We often talk about what truly shapes our future. Is it like amazing new technology, maybe brilliant policies?
Or could it be something, well, more fundamental?
Yeah, exactly. Something that acts as a kind of lifeline for human progress. Our sources for today's deep dive, they actually suggest a pretty clear answer.
Education.
Education. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, today we're diving into some really powerful ideas from materials titled Education, the Lifeline of a Better World. And this isn't just about, facts and figures.
Right.
Our mission today is really to explore why education isn't just, important, but why it feels absolutely necessary for figuring out how to navigate and shape our collective future.
And our mission, specifically for you listening, is to pull out those really potent ideas, those nuggets of knowledge that might just change how you think about learning. Its incredible reach, its impact, and what's next for it. Get ready, because this deep dive, we hope, will reveal some surprising facts, maybe some connections you can genuinely apply, whether you're deep in study yourself, or maybe guiding someone else, or, just intensely curious about what really pushes society forward.
Right.
So let's start with the basics then. What is education, really? I mean, for a lot of us, the picture that comes to mind is a classroom, right? Textbooks, maybe a whiteboard.
The traditional view.
But our sources, they seem to challenge that quite a bit.
They absolutely do. Fundamentally, education is this dynamic process. It's about getting knowledge, sure, but also, crucially, developing skills, practical skills.
Okay.
And learning how to think, how to reason, communicate effectively, solve problems, the really complex ones.
And it can happen anywhere, they say.
That's the fascinating part. It's not just stuck in one building. It happens in school, yes, but just as powerfully at home, maybe online, just in conversations, or, simply through living life, through experiences. And what's more, true education isn't just about filling your head with facts. It actually empowers you.
How so?
Well, it equips you to make informed choices, to genuinely understand different points of view, and to, contribute meaningfully to your community, to society.
Right.
It also sort of quietly builds confidence. It nurtures creativity.
Right.
And it gives you that resilience you need to navigate, challenges, both personal and professional, throughout your whole life.
Okay, so if education can happen anywhere, that raises a really interesting question for me. When does its impact really kick in? Our sources seem to suggest the foundations are laid, surprisingly early, in childhood.
That's right.
They highlight it as maybe the most crucial stage for brain development, literally setting up the wiring for future learning and behavior.
It's exactly that. Early education isn't just, learning letters and numbers. It's about actually building those neural pathways during a super critical developmental window.
Wow.
It helps kids develop core cognitive abilities, emotional ones too. It vastly improves their language, their communication skills, teaches them social interaction. And maybe most importantly, it builds these vital habits like curiosity, like discipline, right from the start.
So it has long-term effects.
Huge.
Yeah.
Research consistently shows that kids who go to preschool or some early learning program, they're significantly more likely to succeed later on, not just in school, but socially, emotionally too.
Oh.
Beyond that, schools provide this uniquely safe, structured place for kids to grow. That becomes especially vital in communities dealing with, say, poverty or instability.
Makes sense.
And for girls, specifically, getting access to education is just a massive game changer. It translates directly into a safer, more independent, more empowered future. It drastically cuts the risk of early marriage, opens up way more career options, and dramatically improves maternal health later on.
It's a really compelling case, especially when you think, now in this digital age, information is everywhere, right? At our fingertips. So some people might wonder, does formal schooling even matter anymore? Can't we just Google everything?
Yeah, the Google argument.
But our sources make a powerful case, maybe even a surprising one, for why that traditional schooling still holds immense value.
They really do. Because while, yes, information online is abundant, schools provide routine, structure, that helps cultivate discipline, effective study habits, things that are hard to build alone.
True.
They also offer exposure to a huge range of subjects, areas of interest you might just never stumble upon by yourself.
Right. Serendipity.
Exactly. And crucially, there's the whole socialization piece, interacting with peers, learning teamwork, negotiation, cooperation, Self-learning often misses that.
Yeah, you don't get that from a screen.
Not in the same way.
Yeah.
And of course, the mentorship, the guidance from teachers, their role models, motivators, problem solvers, it's irreplaceable.
And the experiences too, right?
Absolutely. In-person education gives you those experiences that, purely self-directed learning often lacks. Think about sports, arts, debates, field trips. All that stuff is vital for developing a well-rounded emotional intelligence, that real-world resilience.
Okay, so we've talked about the individual power, but what happens when that sort of ripples outward? Our sources show how education directly fuels economies and reshapes communities.
Yeah.
So yeah, what does this all mean for our wallets, for our society?
Well, the link is actually very direct.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, the more education someone has, the higher their income tends to be, the better their career prospects.
Is there data on that?
Yeah, the World Bank, for instance, they specifically report that each extra year of schooling can boost someone's earnings by about 8 to 10%.
Wow, that's significant.
It is. But it's not just about direct income. Education also fosters that mindset for entrepreneurship, for innovation.
Right, thinking differently.
And in today's job market, which is changing so fast, with automation, AI, staying educated means staying adaptable, staying employable.
And it's not just about university degrees, is it?
Not at all. Vocational training, technical education, they're proving just as valuable. They equip people with really in-demand practical skills that the economy needs right now.
It's striking then how that individual prosperity seems to translate into something that can push back against societal divides. Our sources really highlight education's power to kind of level the playing field.
It's transformative. You could argue education is one of the most powerful tools we have for fighting inequality. It genuinely opens doors for disadvantaged people, empowers those who might otherwise be left behind.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about girls gaining control over their lives in societies where that's difficult, or people from rural areas, low-income backgrounds, getting access to better jobs they just wouldn't have seen otherwise. It helps entire communities break cycles of poverty that have lasted generations. Plus, it makes citizens more aware of their rights, their responsibilities.
Yeah.
Fosters engagement.
So the overall effect.
When everyone has access to good quality education, society just becomes inherently fairer, more inclusive, and ultimately more peaceful too.
That makes me wonder then, does education's reach go beyond just what we know or our bank accounts? Is it shaping more than just our minds, like our character?
It absolutely does. A truly well-rounded education, it doesn't just sharpen your intellect, it profoundly shapes your character, your emotional intelligence.
How does that work?
Well, it helps people develop empathy, compassion for others. It teaches them how to communicate respectfully, even when they disagree strongly, how to manage tough emotions like anger or disappointment, how to work well in a team,
Right.
and how to make ethical choices in tricky situations. These aren't just, soft skills. They're utterly essential, not just at work, but in every relationship, family, friends, community, even globally.
And what's really fascinating here, connecting some dots, is how deeply education seems to be tied up with our collective health, our well-being. It's not a link you always make immediately.
No, but it's a profound one. Undeniable, really. Educated individuals, they consistently tend to make better health choices.
Like what?
Well, they tend to have a better understanding of hygiene, nutrition, mental health practices, why regular checkups matter, things like that.
Okay.
And similarly, educated parents are much more likely to make sure their kids get immunized, to get timely medical care. That leads to healthier families overall.
And on a bigger scale.
On a societal level, this translates into lower infant mortality rates, better maternal health, reduced rates of diseases like HIV, even measurable decreases in issues like substance abuse and domestic violence. The health of a society and its education levels are just powerfully linked.
So if we broaden that lens even further, how does education impact the health of our democracies or foster global peace?
It's fundamental, really. Education empowers people to think critically, to, question authority intelligently, not just blindly accept things, and to participate actively in democratic processes.
So more informed voters.
Exactly. An informed citizen is way more likely to vote, to demand transparency from leaders, to stand up for justice when they see injustice. And what's more, education helps us genuinely understand other cultures, other religions, different histories. That builds respect. It cultivates cooperation. And those are absolutely essential for any kind of lasting peace in this diverse, interconnected world we live in.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you find that educated societies are just demonstrably more resilient when crisis hits, they're more innovative when things change, and they're more united when faced with conflict.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the present day. The digital age has just completely changed how we access education, hasn't it? It's broken down a lot of old barriers.
Oh, absolutely. It's created entirely new possibilities. Think about it.
Hmm.
Today, someone can learn coding on free websites,
Right.
master graphic design watching YouTube videos, pick up complex marketing ideas from podcasts, learn a whole new language on a mobile app.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You can even get certifications through MOOCs, those massive open online courses, university-level stuff, often free or low cost. It's really broken down traditional barriers to higher ed. It feels like a democratization of knowledge, in a way.
But there is a catch, isn't there?
There is. This incredible access also shines a light on a new and pretty complex form of inequality, the digital divide.
Explain that a bit.
Well, millions of students around the world still lack access to the necessary devices, laptops, tablets, or reliable internet, or even just the basic digital literacy skills they need to study effectively online. So bridging this gap, it's not just about handing out equipment. It's about ensuring fair access to the actual tools of modern learning. And it's arguably one of the next huge challenges for achieving real educational equity globally.
It's interesting, too, because we're often sort of taught that education has a finish line, graduation day, the final diploma.
Right, the end point.
But our sources really push back against that idea, don't they?
They absolutely do, because the reality is learning is continuous. It's a lifelong journey. It doesn't just stop when you get a piece of paper.
If anything, it's more important now.
Exactly. In today's world, which changes so fast, it's more crucial than ever. Adults constantly need to learn new skills just to stay relevant in their careers.
Yeah.
Parents are always learning new techniques as their kids grow. And, seniors benefit hugely from learning new hobbies or technology. It keeps their minds sharp, boosts happiness, gives life a renewed sense of purpose.
So it's not just a choice, it's almost necessary.
It's increasingly an imperative, I think. For personal growth, yes, but also for societal progress, continuous learning.
Okay, so despite all these incredible benefits we've talked about, these transformative effects, our sources also make it clear that education still faces some really big, persistent challenges today. It's kind of a paradox, isn't it?
It truly is. Unfortunately, yeah, we still see millions of children, especially girls, completely out of school. That's a shocking number. And in many places, the schools that do exist are desperately overcrowded,
Right.
severely underfunded, sometimes just physically unsafe. We also see a significant number of students finishing school without even mastering basic literacy or numeracy. That's a huge failure.
And the teachers?
Often overworked, underpaid, undersupported, which makes it incredibly hard for them to do their best work. Then you've got the rising costs of higher education, making it unaffordable for so many.
Right.
And sometimes this overemphasis on just passing exams, on rote memorization, that can actually harm student well-being instead of fostering real, deep learning.
So lots of problems still.
Yeah. All of this points to an urgent need for some deep reforms. We need to focus on quality, relevance, accessibility, and, genuine innovation in our education systems.
So given all those challenges, but also the immense potential we've discussed, how can we truly reimagine education for tomorrow? What should that future vision look like, according to these sources?
Well, the future of education, as they outline it, really needs to be, first off, truly accessible. For every child, every adult. Doesn't matter about gender, income, where they live.
Okay, universal access.
Right. And it must be balanced, not just academics, but equally focused on critical thinking skills, creativity, mental well-being, the whole person.
Makes sense.
It needs to be flexible, too. Blending in-person and online learning seamlessly, adapting to different needs and situations, and, crucially, practical. Teaching real-life skills people actually use, like communication, teamwork, financial literacy.
Things you don't always get in a standard curriculum.
Exactly. It also needs to be deeply inclusive, really providing strong support for students with disabilities, diverse learning needs. Everyone needs to be brought along.
And purposeful.
Yeah, and perhaps most importantly, purposeful. Actively preparing learners to tackle the big global problems we're facing. Climate change, inequality, public health, violence. Education should equip people to be part of the solution.
Now, to really bring this home, our sources share some incredibly inspiring examples. real people who prove the sheer power of education in the world.
Yeah, they do. I mean, think about figures like Malala Yousafzai, bravely standing up for girls' right to education in Pakistan, surviving an attack for it.
And winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right, becoming this global advocate. Or Kailash Satyarthi, another Nobel laureate who's dedicated his whole life to rescuing thousands of kids from child labor using education and advocacy.
Amazing story.
And then there are just countless unsung heroes, teachers in remote villages all over the world walking miles every single day just to give their students a chance to learn, a chance at a better future.
Wow.
These aren't just, nice individual stories. They are undeniable proof that education, in its widest sense, is genuinely the most powerful tool we have for meaningful change in the world.
This whole deep dive, it really makes it clear, doesn't it? Education is so much more than just a classroom, more than a degree. It feels like a fundamental right, yes, but also an indispensable resource and maybe even a shared responsibility.
I think that's right.
It builds stronger individuals, it fosters fairer societies, and it quite literally lays the foundation for a more peaceful, more prosperous world.
Yeah, if you connect all these threads, pull it all together into the bigger picture, it's just abundantly clear. Education is what helps people lift themselves out of poverty.
Right.
It helps them deeply understand this complex world around us, make better health choices, get more fulfilling jobs, raise stronger families, and ultimately just become better, more contributing human beings.
That's an incredibly impactful message, isn't it? There's a quote from our source that puts it so perfectly. When you educate one person, you change a life. When you educate many, you change the world.
Powerful.
It really makes you think about your own journey of learning, doesn't it? And maybe, more importantly, what role you might play, what role any of us can play in making learning possible for someone else, or in advocating for a world where that lifeline really does extend to everyone.
Yeah.
So as you reflect on everything we've unpacked today, what stands out to why you most from this deep dive? Something to maybe mull over.